We're going to begin by just asking, why are you running for mayor?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you identify as the top three problems facing the city? And what are your plans to address them?
Sure. I'm running for mayor because I love my city. A lifelong Philadelphian, born and raised here. Attended 5 different schools before I got to the 8th grade, as my mom was forced to navigate the educational system to find the right fit for me. It was difficult. Sometimes it was my fault. Sometimes it was adults' fault. But I attended Greenfield Elementary School. Schools went on strike, ended up at High Street Christian Academy, which I guess nowadays would be considered a charter school. It wasn't back then. But they only served a couple of grades. Found myself to Cedar Grove Christian Academy. But I couldn't behave myself, and I ended up at Pickett Middle School, where I realized, no, I do know how to behave myself. But I had to get out of Pickett Middle School, and my mom found me over at Hill Freeman School. So those are the 5 schools I attended in 8 years. I then left Philadelphia to go to Milton Hershey School, a boarding school founded by Milton Hershey for economically disadvantaged children. My life changed when my mom made that decision. I was put into an environment where home life, school life, and social life all convened on behalf of the child. Education became the #1 priority, and everyone that was in my life, from a house parent to a teacher to a coach to a janitor, all felt their responsibility to see me successful from an educational standpoint. I did not realize then, but I certainly do now, that my life changed that day. With the education that I got from Milton Hershey. It set my life on a trajectory that allowed me to be successful and to chart my own course. I went on from there and went to Lock Haven University, came back to graduate school at LaSalle to get a master's in communication, and then I ended up at St. Joseph's University for my MBA. Education for me was a difference maker. I'm running for mayor because kids shouldn't have to be lucky. Kids shouldn't have to be fortunate to get a good education the way I was. The term lottery, as we talk about it here in the city of Philadelphia, suggests that there's an element of chance as to whether or not you're going to get an education. The #1, #2, and #3 issue facing our city of Philadelphia is our educational system and preparing our children from every neighborhood for a life of success. Right now, whether we're talking about governance or we're talking about funding or we're talking about curriculum or other challenges to education, we've not advanced the ball enough on any front, and we're seeing the results of it. They come to Philadelphia for any number of reasons. They don't often stay here. People who grow up here often can't find a way to remain here. Our tax base doesn't grow, and in large part, whether we're talking about big business or small business, whether we're talking about transplants to Philadelphia or homegrown Philadelphians, the educational system must be fixed if we're going to be a world-class city. That was the #1 platform, first part of my platform. The second is job creation. Okay. I do believe that we in the city of Philadelphia have 2 cities, those that have and those that don't have. And it cuts across neighborhoods, it cuts across ethnicities, it cuts across almost everything. And those that have seem to do okay here. And those that don't never seem to get their opportunity. And again, they're related, because I think education is the bridge between those that have and those that don't have, or the path from those that don't have to become those that have. And when I think about jobs, I'm thinking about our tax structure that is uncompetitive, that prevents big businesses with lots of jobs from coming. But then I'm also talking about our tax structure that keeps small businesses from growing and being able to employ others and grow to become big businesses. I'm talking about a regulatory structure through Department of License and Inspections that makes it difficult. We make you compete with us as government to be successful in the city of Philadelphia. So for any number of reasons, I think both attracting big business and allowing small businesses and supporting small businesses to grow is how we change our city. Education, jobs. The third issue is fairness. Fairness is less an issue and more an approach to how we address things. When you have a city where you have those that have and those that don't, never has it been more important to have a mayor who understands that there's more than one question to ask. It's not just who wins, usually it's the people fighting for it, but who loses with every single decision that's being made. When we talk about charter schools versus district schools and inequities of funding. That's a fairness issue. When we talk about tax abatements and development of communities, that's a fairness issue. When we talk about how scarce resources are allocated across our city, there's a fairness issue. And not only should the mayor know who wins with every decision that's made, but he has to, in this environment, ask the question, who loses, and to ensure that the decisions that he or she makes does not adversely affect certain communities. You won't make everybody happy all the time, but you certainly can't make half the people unhappy all the time. And that's really where we are right now. And so I'm focused on those three things. First, I want to reframe the argument from being about charter schools versus district schools. That immediately divides the city into two camps, those that are for district and those that are for charter. And for whatever reason, there's been an inability to come together on the issue. I think by reframing the conversation, we can start a new dialogue. And that question then would be high-performing schools versus underperforming schools. I seek to address underperforming schools. I don't have a problem with charter schools that exist in the city. I will concede that they are more expensive models of education, but I pay, $50 for a pair of shoes. I may pay $75 for a pair of shoes, but I should be wearing those shoes. The most expensive shoes are the ones that take $1 that I never wear. And I'm looking at charter schools and saying, if a charter school is educating kids and he's turning out people who can produce and succeed in life, I'm okay with it. What I'm not okay with is being an expensive model and not educating children. And I'm not just talking about charter schools, I'm also talking about district schools. So what I would seek to do is identify what the appropriate standards of measurement are, how we measure success in our schools. I don't think standardized tests are the way, but you determine what success is and hold people accountable to it the way that you would in any other business. For those that are underperforming, I seek to put them on performance improvement plans where you both identify the areas where they need to improve and fund those improvements, or change management. And I want to be careful here when I say change management. I don't necessarily mean outside school managers coming in. I'm talking about other people who know how to run successful schools and putting them into the schools that need them most. So when we look at schools that are high performing, almost always there's a waiting list. There's no shortage of people who want to get their kids into those high-performing charter schools or those high-performing district schools, also known many times as magnet schools. But one way or another, if those schools want to expand to account for the people that are trying to get into them, I'm okay with the expansion. But I'd first allow you to expand into a neighborhood that does not currently have an option. What I don't want to see is two great charter schools in the same neighborhood. I don't want to see a high-performing charter school and a high-performing district school right next to each other. There's too much need in the city, and if we manage expansion, then we can make sure that you first expand into a neighborhood that doesn't have a quality educational choice, and then once we've got every neighborhood with a good one, we can be a little more flexible with how schools are allowed to expand. The teachers union has said they want to open 19 new community schools. I am fully supportive of that endeavor because at the end of the day, I'm less concerned about the philosophy behind the school and more that you are educating kids. I have one non-negotiable, and that is that we continue to kick the can down the road year after year and let a first grader go to the second grader still functioning like a first grader. And we all know that by the time you get to the fourth grade, if you're not reading at the fourth grade level, they're building jails for you. My platform is built around the premise of coordination and investment, coordinating efforts across every city agency, not just the school district, to focus on education, and across every city, and investing in the front end because we know that investment on the front end costs significantly less than fixing the problem on the back end. And it's not just with education, but it's with almost everything. For example, I changed the oil on my car because I know replacing an engine is unacceptably expensive. So while I may not have the money in my pocket right now or not like changing the oil, I will do it because I know it's a requirement if, in fact, I want this thing to work for a long period of time. And I think we've not made the investments. We've said it's because we don't have money. But we have failed our children in the process, and we then fail the taxpayer as well when we don't make those investments in education. I also want to change the School Reform Commission function. Right now, the School Reform Commission functions as an operator of, I think it's the 8th largest school district in the country. I think that's a problem because they don't have the ability to function in an operational capacity. I think they should function more like a regulator. I disagree with the idea that I don't have political experience. What I would agree with is that I don't have elected office experience, and they're two different things from my perspective. So, my whole career has lived at the intersection of business, communication, and politics. Not politics by academic background, but just by way of professional experience. And so, again, I don't have elected office experience, but I'm very, very familiar with all of the players. I have my own personal relationships with city council that are different from Mayor Nutter's, that are different from any of the other candidates, but they're all meaningful relationships, authentic relationships, and ones that I would bring to bear to advance the ball. Last thing, I don't consider it a handicap not to have held elected office. What I would say is, just as I can't produce a 25-year legislative history, I would suggest that everyone else who does have it has to explain why we haven't solved the problem for our schools, why we haven't solved the problem for job creation, and why does everything seem so unfair. I have a tremendous amount of respect for elected officials, particularly those that have the courage to run for mayor. I will not lie, as I sit and I listen to their accomplishments, during debates and forums, it's easy to be impressed by a lot of the work that's been done. But what I'd suggest is people don't leave the city because construction sites aren't safe. They don't leave the city because we couldn't get Uber X in town. They don't leave the city because taxi cab medallions aren't right or tow truck rotations don't make sense. They leave the city because they can't educate their kids here. They leave the city because they can't get a job or start a business or grow that business here. They leave the city because they think it's unfair, and I've not seen the legislation yet, even in spite of all of those years of experience, to solve for the issues that keep our city from growing. And so I humbly submit my name as an alternative to elected office experience. I don't have it, and so I don't have the burden of explaining why I made one decision or another. And then the question is, will people view my lack of elected office experience as a handicap? And I'll tell you, as somebody who spends 2.5 to 4 hours every single day on the subway talking to people that are outside of the echo chamber that is Center City, Philadelphia, I hear them ready for a change. Two broad areas. One is younger voters in the city of Philadelphia. The second broad area is frustrated voters in the city of Philadelphia. I think the combination of the two gives me most of Philadelphia, if I can convince them that I exist. I'll start with the younger. Since Mayor Nutter was elected in 2007, we have 50,000 new people living in the city of Philadelphia, and every single one of those 50,000 are under the age of 30. The average age for a Philadelphia resident right now is 33 years old. So at the age of 40, many have suggested, well, you're too young to run for mayor. And I'm saying, if you think I'm too young to run for mayor at the age of 40 when the average age of a Philadelphia resident is 33, then you're probably too old to be leading that city. I look at those young folks and I recognize, and I want to make sure I'm clear on this point, especially here as I'm speaking with the Philadelphia Tribune, most of the time when they're talking about millennials in the city of Philadelphia, they're talking about young, white, affluent, educated Philadelphians who have come here for college and university and choose to stay for a few years. They're talking about people that are moving in the Center City and Queens Village and Manayunk and Chestnut Hill and Fishtown, Kensington, and probably Northern Liberties. They often overlook other 18 to 30-year-olds that are already here, that have been let down by the Philadelphia public school system, that have been let down by elected officials, that are living in poverty, that are having difficulty finding their way out of that box. And so I want you to be clear that I'm clear on the distinction between the two. But nonetheless, whether you're talking about, when I talk about young people, I'm talking about all of them, both in the neighborhoods and both in the gentrifying neighborhoods. And so I look at those and the question is, will they vote? People say they don't vote, but I can't tell whether they mean that or if it's wishful thinking, because they did vote. That's how President Obama got elected. And I'll just get to the numbers here now. There's 1 million registered voters in the city of Philadelphia. Most would argue that 200,000 should be removed from the rolls because they haven't voted in the last 5 elections. They've moved or they've died. But either way, I'd suggest that the 200 that come off are on the up end of the higher age end of all registered voters. That leaves 800,000 registered voters in the city of Philadelphia. As of today, 400,000 of those registered voters are under the age of 45, 44 and under. That is fully 1/2 of every registered voter is in my age bracket and younger. There are 75,000 between the ages of 18 and 25 right now. So I look at those numbers and I say, you know what, maybe they don't vote, and my job between now and Election Day is to give them a reason to, but if just but a percentage of them come out, they could absolutely turn the entire political game in Philadelphia on its head. So younger voters is one area. The other area, and I would argue that it's almost just as large, is frustrated voters. These are people who have been completely disenfranchised with the electoral process here in the city of Philadelphia. When I tell you that only 185,000 people came out to vote for mayor, 185 to vote. Mayor Nutter won with 135,000 in 2011. Milton Street cleaned up the rest, the other 25%. But that means 835,000 registered voters remain silent. I don't think they're lazy, and I don't think they're lethargic. I don't think they've given up. I think they feel like their life hasn't changed one single bit. Whether they voted for a black man or not, whether they voted for a white man, they look at elected officials as people who don't have a handle on what's important to them. And they've disengaged. And I think they've been voting with their silence. And I don't endorse it. I think it's the wrong way to go. But I do understand that if your circumstance is the same now as it was 25 years ago, then we haven't done the right things. And so I look at those folks, and my challenge is to convince them that I am authentic, convince them that I mean what I say, that I will do as I say, that I understand their experience, that I come from their neighborhoods, that I will do my part to see them succeed. We were unable to begin raising money until February 7th. February 7th was the day that I announced my campaign. It was a little surprising to me. I thought that perhaps I could start with an exploratory committee, but I was still at PGW during that time, so it was impossible, and I dared not even try. Then with a little bit of pushing, I found myself outside of PGW, and I thought that at that point I could begin raising money, but everyone said, hey, you're not an established candidate. So it wasn't until February 7th that we began. Since that time, we've raised about $15,000. I totally recognize that $15,000 is a rounding error in a mayor's race. It's not enough to go on TV. It's not enough to do a lot of things. But for me personally, that's a lot of money. And I think to the average Philadelphian, when they give you $5, $10 in a city where poverty exceeds 28% and super poor, people making less than $7,000 a year for a family of four, I mean, to give me a dime means you believe in me. And so to have raised $15,000 means a lot to me. We spend it wisely, obviously, and we spend it on things that allow me to have a personal touch with people. But here's what I also have recognized, that when people file their campaign reports, gone are the days of people showing $1 million north in the mayor's race. Independent money has taken over this mayor's race. Special interests have taken over this mayor's race to the point that not even the candidates can claim authenticity at this point, for the most part. I was talking about the relationship between police officers and our communities, the communities that they serve. I was talking about what I believe is a natural result of witnessing trauma. And when there's disrespect between the narrow portion of violent African-American males and violent police officers, they carry the day on the conversation. You would think that all police officers are bad or all black men are violent. And it's just not the case. But I do concede that because of the behavior of those few young black men who are violent and those officers, there is distrust in our neighborhoods that we must first at least acknowledge is there so that we can seek to address it. And that wasn't a 30-second answer, but that's what I was trying to communicate, not that somehow I'm stereotyping myself or the people that I care so deeply about in my neighborhood. The statistics, I didn't make them up. I'm not talking about crime in general, right? I'm talking about violent crime. I'm talking about gunshots and deaths. It's us, both as the perpetrators and as the victims. And it's sad. And if I did make them up, I would make them say something different because it pains me to know that that's the case. And so to answer the other part of your question, the first part, the solution, I think there's some things that we can do in the short term, and they will sort of be the Band-Aid on the bullet wound. But really what we need here is to acknowledge that it's a bullet wound and acknowledge that we need surgery. The surgery is education and jobs. I'm going back to the beginning where we started this conversation. Education and jobs. I would like to, at some point, take a look at all of the shootings that took place and then look at the education and the employment factors of the perpetrators of crime. I would argue that in almost every case, we're going to be talking about people who were either uneducated or unemployed. So my solution for a safe city is to educate and employ. One and two. I'm running for mayor because I think the city could use a different perspective. I think we've tried it the same way for a long time, and I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and again and expecting something different. I am not running to be mayor of the young people. It's not for them, but I will say that it is about them. The solutions to our pension problem, we may have to renegotiate how we calculate pensions and those kinds of things, but ultimately it's growing our tax base. There's no one big bang that got us into the situation we're in as a city. It was a series of little things that we made the wrong decisions about, and I think our path back is to fix those little things over time, to convince young people to stay, expand the tax base, give us more resources so we can invest in more training so that people can get jobs that we attract here. And it's a system. I will say that if I ask you how to be healthy, you might tell me eat right, exercise, and sleep. I can't eat whatever I want, never exercise, and then sleep all day. You can't make up for not doing two by doing a lot of the third. And I think that fixing our pension challenge, fixing our schools, fixing our tax structure are three of the biggest things that we'll need to address, and we'll have to make small incremental steps on all of those. The next mayor will be the 99th mayor of this city. 98 before him and hopefully hundreds to come after him. And so you're really not there to fix everything in one day, but you are here to put your fingerprint on the city for the time that it was put under your leadership. And as mayor, I will focus on education, number 1, 2, and 3. Number 4 will be job creation, and number 5 will again be an approach of focusing on fairness. I will bring different perspectives. I will bring new ideas, new energy, and I have from now, I think it's 49 days from now until Election Day, to convince enough Philadelphians to try something new. And that's what I expect to do.